I want you to picture your financial junk drawer. Everybody has one, even if you've never called it that. Inside it is the old retirement account from a job you left 2 companies ago that you keep meaning to deal with. Next to that sits the savings app you signed up for during the pandemic and can't remember the password to. Then there's the 3 or 4 credit cards, the second bank account you opened for a bonus and never closed, the budgeting app you downloaded with great intentions and opened exactly twice, and the subscription quietly charging your card every month for something you have not used since last winter. We all have this drawer, and here's the thing nobody tells you about it. That drawer isn't just messy, it's expensive. It is quietly draining your money, your time, and a surprising amount of your mental energy every single day. While you're not looking, I think a lot of us are tired in a way that's hard to name. Modern life keeps asking you to add another account, another app, another subscription, another strategy, another thing to keep track of. And somewhere along the way, the whole apparatus of managing your money stopped feeling like control and started feeling like a second job you never applied for. If you've ever felt that low hum of financial overwhelm, the sense that there's always one more thing you're supposed to be on top of, I want to show you something freeing today. And I don't think that tiredness is in your head. I think most people are quietly craving the same thing, even if they'd never say it out loud. Less noise, less to manage, and less of that feeling that you're falling behind on a race you never agreed to enter. We tend to assume the answer to financial stress is more income, more accounts, more optimizing, more hustle. But for a lot of people, the thing that would actually bring peace is the exact opposite. It's permission to have less, to do less, to want less, and to discover that less is not a downgrade at all. The wealthiest, calmest financial lives I've ever seen are almost always the simplest ones, not the most sophisticated, the simplest. And getting there is not about discipline or willpower. It's about a handful of rules that let you take things away. My name is Tom. This channel is real personal finance for normal people. No motivational fluff, no fantasy returns, just what the math actually does over time. And today the math is going to make a case you don't hear often, which is that in money, subtracting usually beats adding. So if you're ready to make your financial life smaller, quieter, and somehow richer at the same time, hit subscribe and stay with me. Let me start by killing a myth, because it's the root of the whole problem. We've been taught that complexity is sophistication. That the person juggling 7 accounts and 3 trading apps and a watch list of hot stocks is the serious one. The one who really gets it. It's the opposite. Complexity is not a sign that you're winning. Complexity is a tax. And you pay it in 4 different currencies, most of which you never see leave your pocket. The first currency is plain old fees, the kind that hide inside the clutter. The second is money you literally lose track of and forget you own. Let me give you a number that should genuinely shock you. Right now in America, there are roughly 32 million forgotten retirement accounts, holding about $2.1 trillion. Just sitting there abandoned because people changed jobs and left the account behind. The average one holds almost $67,000. That is not pocket change. Someone misplaced. That is $67,000 of someone's actual retirement lost in the clutter, and it gets worse because more than half of the people with an old account aren't even sure where it is, and most don't know the login. So that money sits in whatever high-fee, badly chosen funds it was parked in years ago. A forgotten account like that, left at the medium plan fee for a couple of decades instead of moved into a clean, low-fee one, can quietly lose you $50,000 or more to fees alone. And in a worse case, the foregone growth runs into the hundreds of thousands. That is the tax of complexity. Not a fee you agreed to. Money that simply evaporated because there were too many accounts to keep track of. The third currency you pay is mistakes, because the more moving parts you have, the more chances you have to fumble one. A missed payment here, a duplicate fee there, money sitting in cash in one account while you're paying interest on debt in another because you couldn't see them side by side. And the fourth is the quietest and maybe the most expensive, which is your mental energy, your attention, the finite amount of brain you have for a given day. Every account, every app, every open decision is a tiny tab left open in your mind, humming in the background. You might not feel any single one, but stack up enough of them, and that's the low-grade financial stress that follows people around. The thing that makes them feel behind even when they're doing fine. You've probably felt it yourself. That sense of being worn down by having too many little things to decide and track, where by the end of the day, you got nothing left for the choices that actually matter. Whatever the science ends up saying about exactly how that works, the lived experience is real. And a cluttered financial life is a steady drain on the one resource you can least afford to waste, which is your attention. The entire system, by the way, is built to keep all of this invisible because as long as the complexity feels normal, everyone in the chain gets to keep charging you for it. So the goal today is to stop paying the tax. And we do that with rules, real ones, that all point in the same direction, which is toward less. The first rule is the simplest and it's the foundation for everything else. One of each. You need one checking account, one high-yield savings account, one regular brokerage account, and one credit card. For retirement, keep the 401k at your current job, and then open one IRA and use it to swallow up every old account you've left scattered behind you. That's it. That's a complete financial life for almost everyone watching this. When you have one of each, nothing gets forgotten because there's nothing to forget. You can see your entire financial picture in about 2 minutes. Every old retirement account from an old job gets rolled into that one IRA, where you can actually see it and it sits in good, cheap investments instead of rotting in some forgotten plan. Every duplicate bank account from some long ago bonus gets closed. The pile of cards becomes one or two. This single rule, just consolidating down to one of each, is the highest value afternoon of financial work most people could possibly do. And it doesn't earn you a dime in the obvious sense, it just stops the leaks. And the relief that comes with it is immediate. The framing you usually see is some version ten timing in some forgotten corner. You feel a weight come off that you didn't even know you were carrying. That feeling, that is what less is more actually means in practice. The second rule is where the real peace comes from. Decide once. Here's what most people do. They treat every month as a fresh set of money decisions. Should I move some to savings this month? How much? Should I invest now or wait? Did I pay that down? And every one of those repeated decisions costs a little attention and a little willpower. And willpower is the one resource that genuinely runs out. The minimalist move is to make each of those decisions exactly one time, set it to happen automatically, and then never decide it again. Your savings, your investing, your bills, all of it should flow on its own on the same days every month without you touching anything. Think of it like a thermostat instead of a stove. A stove you have to stand over and adjust constantly or it burns. A thermostat you set once and forget, and it just quietly keeps the room right for years. Most people are standing over a stove with their money when they could have set a thermostat. When you decide once and automate, the mental clutter doesn't get reduced, it disappears because the decision isn't waiting for you anymore. The third rule fixes the way most people try to control their money, which is by tracking everything. Track one number. The classic advice is to build a budget with 20 or 30 categories and log every transaction. And I'm telling you, almost nobody sustains that, and the ones who do are often so buried in the small stuff that they miss the big stuff. You don't need to know that you spent $11 more on coffee this month. You need to know one number, the gap between what comes in and what you actually keep and invest. That's the whole game. If that one number is healthy and growing, you are winning, and you do not need to audit your grocery receipts to prove it. Pick the single number that tells you the truth, check it once a month in 10 seconds, and let yourself off the hook for the rest. Simplicity here isn't laziness. It's aiming your limited attention at the one thing that actually moves your life. Before I give you the fourth rule, which is honestly the heart of this whole video, do me a quick favor. Go look at your own financial junk drawer in your head and drop a comment telling me the one thing in there you haven't touched in over a year. An old account, a dead subscription, an app you forgot you had. I read these, and I promise just naming it out loud is the first step to clearing it. The fourth rule is the one that turns this from a money video into something bigger. Name your enough. Here is the trap almost everyone is caught in without realizing it. There is no finish line. The culture is built as a treadmill, where every achievement just moves the goalposts. You get the raise, and within a few months, the nicer apartment and the newer car and the upgraded everything have absorbed it completely, and you're right back to feeling like you need more. You're not chasing a number. You're chasing a feeling that recedes every time you get close because there's always someone with a little more. And the whole machine is designed to keep you reaching. The way off the treadmill is shockingly simple and almost nobody does it. You decide on purpose in advance what enough looks like for you. A specific life, a specific level of spending that genuinely makes you happy. Past which more stuff just becomes more to maintain and more to worry about. And then you stop there. Not because you have to, but because you chose to. For one person, enough might be a paid-off modest house, a reliable car, a couple of good trips a year, and no alarm clock. For another, it's something else. The point isn't the particular picture. The point is that you draw at all, because the moment you have a real finish line, the comparison game loses its grip on you. Your neighbor's new truck stops being a thing you're behind on and starts being just a truck. You already know what you're aiming at, and it isn't whatever showed up in your feed this morning. And here's where naming your enough becomes the most powerful money move you can make, mathematically, not just emotionally. The amount you need to be free to never have to work for money again is roughly 25 times what you spend in a year. That's the standard math of financial independence. And if you're retiring early, it's a bit more, closer to 30 times, because the money has to last longer. Now flip it around. Every single recurring expense you decide you don't actually need lowers that freedom number by 25 times its yearly cost. Or more. Cut $100 a month of stuff that wasn't making you happy anyway. And you didn't just save $1,200 a year. You lowered the finish line by $30,000. You can reach freedom $30,000 sooner just by deciding you had enough. This is why a simple life isn't the consolation prize, it's the cheat code. The person who knows they're enough needs a far smaller pile to be free and gets there years earlier than the person sprinting on the treadmill trying to fund a life that keeps getting more expensive on purpose. The fifth rule keeps the whole thing clean over time because clutter creeps back. Subtract before you add. Make it a habit, once a year, to go looking for things to remove rather than things to add. And the obvious place to start is the quietest leak of all, subscriptions. The average American is paying for around 8 subscriptions and spending about $219 a month on them. But when you ask people what they think they spend, the average guess is about $86. That is not a small miss. People are spending more than 2.5 times what they believe they are every month on autopilot. And more than 4 in 10 of us are paying for at least one subscription we completely forgot we had. The system bills you at 3 in the morning across a dozen different dates so you never feel it. So once a year you hunt them down, and you cancel everything you wouldn't actively resubscribe to today. If you trimmed a typical subscription load from that 219 down to around 70, you'd free up about $150 a month. Run that through the freedom math we just did, and that one afternoon of canceling is worth around $45,000 off your number. $45,000 for canceling things you'd already forgotten you were paying for. There's a way of seeing money that makes all 5 of these rules feel obvious, and once it clicks, you can't unsee it. Stop pricing things in dollars and start pricing them in freedom. Every recurring cost in your life isn't really a price tag. It's a tax on your future self, because it raises the size of the pile you need before you're free. And every purchase isn't really money, it's hours of your life, the hours you traded to earn it. When you look at a subscription or an upgrade or a nicer version of something you already own and you ask, not, can I afford this, but is this worth pushing my freedom further away? You start saying no to a lot of things, not out of deprivation, but because freedom turns out to be the thing you actually wanted all along. Let me show you what this looks like in real life because I know a couple who built exactly this. Carl and Linda. Carl was a plumber. Linda taught grade school, and they raised their family in half of a modest duplex in Pittsburgh. By the numbers our culture cares about, they were never impressive. They never out-earned their neighbors, never drove anything that turned ahead, never had the big house. But Carl and Linda figured out they're enough decades ago, and then they just stopped moving the line. They had one of each. They automated everything, they didn't play the upgrade game, and they quietly let the years and the simplicity do their work. Today they are more financially free than people who made 3 times what they made. Because those people spent 30 years on the treadmill and Carl and Linda spent 30 years off it. Think about how that's even possible. It's not that they earned more, they earned less. It's that they needed less. So the pile required to set them free was small, and they reached it while the big earners were still chasing a finish line that kept moving every time they got a raise. Carl and Linda were aiming at a fixed target the whole time, so they actually hit it. When you talk to them, the thing you notice isn't pride, it's peace. They have the one thing all the complexity was secretly supposed to buy and almost never does. I'll be honest with you, I had to learn this the slow way myself. For years I thought being good with money meant doing more of it. More accounts, more research, more apps, more strategies, more tabs open in my brain at all times. I genuinely believed all that activity meant I was on top of it. What it actually meant was that I was paying the complexity tax in every currency at once. The fees, the things I lost track of, the dumb little mistakes, and most of all the constant low static of having too much to manage. The year I finally simplified, collapsed it all down to one of each, automated everything, named my enough, and started canceling instead of adding. Two things happened at once. I ended up with more money because the leaks stopped, and I felt lighter because the noise stopped. I didn't expect the second one. It turned out to be the part I valued most. Here's what I want you to walk away with. A simple financial life is not a smaller life, it's a freer one. All the complexity you've been carrying, all those accounts and apps and subscriptions and the mental weight of them was sold to you as progress, as sophistication, as taking your money seriously. It was never any of those things, it was a tax. And you are allowed to stop paying it whenever you decide to. Peace and freedom are becoming the real luxuries in a world built to keep you adding. And the wild part is that they're cheaper than the chaos. You don't get them by acquiring one more thing. You get them by taking things away until what's left is just the stuff that actually matters. If this gave you a little breathing room today, go watch my video on how much you truly need to retire. Because the number is almost certainly smaller than the one in your head, and it pairs perfectly with everything we just talked about. Drop a comment telling me what's in your junk drawer that you're finally going to clear out. Hit subscribe so the next one finds you, and I'll see you in the next video.